Good afternoon, respected Chair, delegates of the conference. At the outset, let me thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to present this paper. I'm a teacher educator. That's the title of my paper. For almost 10 years, I've been exploring the possibility of using technology for teaching, and now I'm trying to look into the scope for integrating artificial intelligence for teacher education. This is a humanoid, and a few years ago in a school in Bangalore, a robot was trying to teach. Similarly, in Georgia Tech, Jill Watson, and for 1 year, the students thought Jill Watson is actually a real teacher, was trying to communicate with the students. The students believe that's a real teacher. So AI is being used. So shortly, it's going to happen in teacher education too. So I'll briefly tell you something about what motivated me to do the research, the problem, the objective, the method, the feasibility and constraints, and of course the limitations and implications of my study. Now, when the COVID pandemic struck, everyone shifted to online teaching, and of course teacher education also was compelled to do it. Why compelled? There was no training, but we were all forced to do that. So far it was face-to-face training. But then, now that Omicron is also spreading, and people are thinking about offering virtual teacher education, and soon it's going to become the norm. I wanted to find out the feasibility of integrating AI tools for teacher education. There's a problem, We know that AI is being used for education. But then in a college of teacher education, it's not a transmission of knowledge. There is transaction. Of course, for this you can use AI-based tools. But the problem is, in a college of teacher education, you demonstrate skills, which the students actually do it for teaching. And while they're teaching, they're going to draw on procedural knowledge, that is factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, and they're going to apply it. The question is, do you think AI can help you in this? Can it be used effectively? This is a big problem, So what are the objectives of my study? I try to identify the use of AI-based tools for transacting factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, and procedural knowledge. Okay. And then I try to identify tools for assessing, where for practice teaching. That's a major component of teacher education. Now, what's the method? Now, what I did was I identified the content in the syllabus of the Bachelor of Education program, those things that come under factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, not of the entire syllabus, but only a selection, particularly the third semester syllabus. One paper prescribed for study in the University of Kerala. Then I try to identify appropriate AI-backed tools for that. Finally, I'm suggesting a 4-phase plan of action, and I've identified a checklist also to how to go about doing it. Okay. Now imagine a student comes and asks you, you're the teacher educator, how do I teach this particular line from Keats? Season of myths and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturings. And son is one thing, friend is another thing, season is another thing. It is not the meaning that the student asks, but the trainee asks, how will I teach it? Of course, if you look at technology, you can say, oh, it's very simple. You can get the picture of each star. And of course, you can show this season line. Is it enough? It's not enough. Why? Because, this has to begin with previous knowledge. What is previous knowledge? You'll have to tell them about the 4 seasons. And you tell them how it changes, the same thing. So I'm using a visual. But, the advantage of using technology is that you can visualize it. You use something like this. It helps them understand the concept better. But even then it is not over, because what the student asks is, how will you teach it? Then finally you bring this. This is autumn season. Remember, in winter there is no sunlight. But spring you had, summer very hot, but winter very cool. In between comes autumn, and you can see the mist there. And when the sunlight seeps in through these leaves, it It is like as though the sun is with you throughout, like a friend, a close friend. And you like sitting here and watching it. Look at the beauty of it. That is why it's called the close bosom friend. And that is how you try to communicate. Do you think the AI tool can do all this? I have my own doubts. Now, if you look at my paper, in the appendix, I've got a column where factual knowledge, the conceptual knowledge, the procedural knowledge have been identified, and the feasibility for using AI for each. Now, the topic here I've chosen is collaborative learning. And when you're thinking of collaborative learning, you'll have to think of the learner. And you have to also look at the group. And remember, learners have different learning styles. So if you're going to make use of procedural knowledge, the kind of activity has to look into that. So that means you have to think of tools that are suitable for us. See how complex the whole process is? Now, earlier I did mention about what happened in Georgia Tech University. I can use AI-powered chat boxes for repetitive answers. It can be fed into the computer and immediately you get an answer. But the greatest advantage is you can visualize it. You can make a simulation, web-based environments. For instance, you can make use of LMS. And you see, teacher education, this is what Link says, is iterative. It's a complex process. You need to look backward, forward, inside out, outside in. What is iterative? It is somewhat like the computerized system, So programming goes into it. It's so very complex. So many things have to be looked into it. Now, another thing which I've done is I prepared a checklist for the 4 phases which I've identified: the transmission phase, transaction phase, assessment, and more importantly, the practice teaching, where this teacher trainee, after getting the training, goes to the school, teaches under the supervision of the teacher. But what are you going? But here you need different kinds of tools for capturing facial expression and so on. Now, what are the limitations of my study? See, I've selected only a few topics. And not only that, I do not look very deeply into practice teaching because it needs sophisticated tools. And you need the expertise of programmers to come up with appropriate AI-based tools for practice teaching, for assessing practice teaching. Now, what are the implications of my study? Now, shortly, we are going to shift to AI for virtual teacher education, which means teacher educators have to be familiarized with AI-based tools. And only then they can start using it. The possibilities, you have to teach them. It's very important. Now, there's one wonderful study. This is a review of online teaching and learning practices by teacher educators during the COVID pandemic. I've just identified 3 things which is equally important. What is learning design as part of using AI? What is the scope of reflection and knowledge development? Then, finally, using online tools, the online platform itself. We are just very new to it. Only during the COVID, we started using the online platform for teaching and learning. But still a lot we have to learn. Okay, these are a few references. Please look at the last 2 references. One, this is the use of WhatsApp. In fact, I did try to teach using WhatsApp, the teacher education syllabus for revision purposes. And even during COVID-19, made use of the RACE model of the University of New South Wales for curriculum transaction. 2 studies have already been published. You can have a look at it. So this is it. Thank you so much.